Okay, so after follow chain, if the trade mechanism is intact, we can close the deal and move houses. So now we are looking at moving houses. How do we actually move the house? Let's have a look. This actually is a very, very big function. So we have to look at step by step. The basic idea is for the buyer, it will move to a new house. For the seller, after it sold its house, it will also move to its own new house. So basically, it's about moving houses. How do we do it? First of all, we are looking at the buyer, which is the owner, and we will look at its made offer on property, which is which house the buyer wants to buy. And that house is a new house. We define it as a new house. And if the new house is actually not a house, meaning the buyer is not actually buying, meaning the buyer does not need to move. Okay, of course. He's not buying a house, how could he move? Then we assign my owner of the new house into seller. So here, we assume the new house is actually a house. Then the house must have its own owner, and its original owner is the seller. That's natural. So, and if the seller is actually an owner, so we can start to calculate when the seller sold the house, after the seller sold the house, how much money does the seller make? And this is called profit. And this profit is actually the selling price of the house minus the mortgage the seller has to pay if he's holding the house. So after he sold the house, the mortgage becomes zero. And the difference between the sale price and the mortgage is the profit the seller make. So if the seller made the profits, and the seller of course will add the profits into the seller's capital, become the capital of the sellers. And now the seller may consider to use the capital to buy a new house. Now, since the deal is made, we will change the new house owner to be the buyer. And so we change the ownership. And now, since the buyer already using the money to buy the new house, so he's doing the transaction. Once the transaction is done, there will be tax, and there are also duties payable back. So the owner, after he pays the full sale price, he will also get part of the money back as the duty payable. Okay, so we can calculate the duty payable. And if the owner cannot pay the house in full cash, then the owner has to get a mortgage. And since he's going to get a mortgage, the mortgage, nobody is going to ask a smaller mortgage. He will ask the mortgage as big as possible. Okay, given the owner's income and the value of the house, he will ask the mortgage as big as possible. And here we have two formula to calculate the mortgage, and we will choose the smaller value provided by either of the formula. And then as after we paying the rest with the capital, because the mortgage is paid for us by the bank, right? We borrow the money from the bank, so that's the amount is paid, and the remaining amounts we have to pay with our own cash, which is from our capital accounts. But it doesn't mean, the rest is equal to the capital. Sometimes the capital is more, so we keep the remaining inside the capital accounts. All right, and then every month or every year we just have to repay some of the money back to the bank for the mortgage. But if the buyer is a cash buyer, he has a lot of cash, so the buyer just uses capital to pay all the money, all the sale price of the house after minus the duty payable. So that's why there's no mortgage needed. So mortgage is 0, repayment is also 0. And the remaining of the money will still be kept in the capital after they paid the house. And if the buyer's capital is not enough for down payment, for example, the mortgage is paid by the bank, and the remaining amounts need to be paid by the buyer's capital. But what if the capital is not enough? Which means that the capital will be negative value after paid the down payment. But we will set the negative remaining to be 0, which means the capital will always be 0. But here is the problem. If the down payment is more than the buyer can afford, how could the transaction be made? There's not enough money. How can we do this? This is a question. Okay, put this question aside. Let's talk about the new entrants, the newcomer into the city. They at the very beginning are invisible because they have no house. But now, since they bought a house, they become visible. And we can move these new entrants as buyers into these new houses, which means we will set these newcomers, these buyers, homeless record to 0. Okay, because they have a house now, they are not homeless anymore, so homeless becomes 0. And we set the buyer's my house property to be the new house. Okay, the new house become the buyer's my house, of course. And we will record the current time takes to be the time the house is bought. And we save it under the variable called the date of purchase. This is probably a property of a house. And we ask each of the new house to put off itself from the market. Right? Probably under the house, it is not for sale. We set that for sale, on sale as false. And we make offered to, the house is offered to some owners. We set that property to be nobody because it is not offered to other owners. It is not for sale. And on the buyer's context, the buyer is not making any offer to other houses because the buyer is staying in his newly bought house. Is not making offers to buy other houses. And create a record under the buyer's context. Because the buyer already just bought something, we need to have a record for the realtors to keep. So we make the record invisible because the record does not need to be shown on the map. And the record, that record will record the current time to be the date when the record is created. And we also assign the new house, the current house, to the house property of the record, because the record need to record the transaction, who bought which house. And we assign the sale price of the new house to be the selling price of the record. Okay, and we ask the new house realtor to save the record into its sales list, because the record is kept by the realtors. And finally, we will count one into the moving. We will count one more moving house into the moves. The moves will count how many household has moved around. So since just moved one house, so we add one more. And if seller as owner do exist, we will also ask the seller to do the same function as well, because the seller also sold this house and will buy another house. Once he bought another house, he will also move itself to the new house. So the seller will apply this function as well.